I knew I was going to sell insurance. I had this unshakable belief that they were going to buy insurance because I'd already seen it in my head of them buying. And so the belief shaped my entire appointment. All right, welcome everybody to the How to Sell Insurance podcast. This is Ryan Federico, joined by Grant Lieber, the man, the myth, the legend. And we at some point in time are going to be joined by Ashton DeLango-Lunde, but he's busy writing an application. We've been waiting to record this episode, sitting around watching him deal with the 77-year-old signing an e-application. So we wish him the best, and we hope that he does get to join us to talk about our takeaways from the SWAT conference. And just sort of throw out there, this is the first time that I had ever been to a SWAT conference. We just attended, just happened here in May 2024. I know we're not supposed to date podcast episodes, but man, I'd never been to one, and everybody had told me about it, and I decided to take the leap and get a ticket to go to SWAT. And man, I was impressed. Doesn't even feel like the right level. I got some immediate takeaways. I was blown away by the production value that was at the conference. And the plan of this episode is for us to talk about some of the takeaways that we learned from that SWAT conference. And I want to tee it up to Mr. Grant Lieber to talk about his experience at the conference just overall.
Yes, sir. I guess the first thing I would want to address is that a conference like this for me personally is really kind of a newer idea. We're so fortunate that we're with a company that has so many conferences on such a consistent basis, as well as a lot of local kind of one-day boot camps and corporate overviews that, we don't necessarily think, or at least I never necessarily really thought about outside events that can help us grow. And it was really just the fact that we have such a great, friend and business partner in Nate Offert from kind of a different agency that was promoting his event of SWAT. And we got a lot of good feedback from people that have been there previously. And we thought, hey, let's go ahead and take a leap and make the commitment, make the investment, and go there and see what there is to learn. And I think we both agree that was definitely a worthwhile investment and really worth our time. But I just think, first of all, this was really the first time that I went to an event that wasn't hosted by our company, so to speak. And I guess kind of because it's really, there's a lot of parallels. It's in the insurance space. Pretty much everyone there was an insurance agent, owned insurance agencies. And our corporate office actually was a part sponsor in it, so it's kind of like it wasn't too far off the beaten path, but I would say it definitely fell into a category where we were working with people that weren't within our immediate company. And so having that perspective, I thought was a really cool thing.
Man, 100%. I agree with that. Like not only getting the different perspective, but seeing the same struggles in different parts of the industry, the same common goals in different parts of the industry, a lot of the same language, things that I'm not really ever exposed to. And I'll throw this out there because I think that I'm the personality type that likes this. We got the elevated ticket, and the elevated ticket was incredible. I mean, red carpet treatment the whole way. Every break, there was a VIP lounge with like just over the top food. At one point in time, they had a full prime rib that they were cutting slices of prime rib off, and a baked salmon and barbecued shrimp. And there was a charcuterie board like I've never seen before, with just looked like they went to the grocery store and just got every cheese that was in the cheese locker and just like threw it out on the charcuterie board. Man, it was amazing. The level of detail that was put into the party at the Nate Offert estate and the sushi restaurant where we did an all-you-can-eat sushi that was incredible on the last day. If you're going to go, I would first off highly suggest that you get to the next year's SWAT conference. This was my first one, and I liked it so much, I immediately bought my ticket for next year. But getting to the SWAT conference, and then if you like that sort of thing, I would 1,000% say that I got so much more out of the experience by having that elevated ticket, being around the other people that also got that elevated ticket, and networking was cool.
Yeah, maybe just to talk about that for a second, because when we think about these types of events and you think about like access to certain people, it's kind of like you ever look at going to a concert. They've got, general admission and kind of the back. Then they've got the different seating. Closer to the front you get, of course, the more expensive it is. And then they've got even, you can go all the way to VIP meet and greets and backstage passes and things like that. And I think in the context of a concert, and you're meeting your favorite person, you buy the backstage pass to go hang out with some celebrity you think is really cool. You kind of get the photo, you get to talk about it. But I don't know if you're necessarily taking away something that's going to really help you grow or develop as a person, other than having a really cool experience. But like when you think about paying for a VIP pass in the way that we did, and getting access to people in kind of a confined, captive environment where you're able to have a pretty open and honest conversation. And it's not like, hey, I just kind of ran into them in the hallway and, we don't really have a whole lot of time to kind of talk. Like, that's really special to be able to talk to people and ask them questions. And there were so many people that I never had the opportunity to speak with before, and I probably wouldn't have had the opportunity to speak with if we didn't have, one of those slightly more expensive ticket types to be able to do that. And so I think the one thing is, number one, you don't overextend yourself. I think it comes down to, like, when I was first going to any events or any conference, it always starts with me getting a $25 seat on the lawn, right out there in left field, and then you kind of progressively move closer and closer. But I would say if you're at a position where, it's something you can do, something you can maybe budget for to get some of that special treatment, get around some of these high quality leaders, I think it's worth that investment for sure.
Man, get in the door. I love that. Make sure that you get there, because the SWAT conference was unbelievable. That's the, sort of the message of this particular episode. And we're going to talk about some of the things that we learned, but it's worth every dollar that you spend to get in there. I personally think that, the elevated ticket, the VIP special ops ticket, is worth even more, just because of the connections that I made, like Grant said, and some of the networking and some of the deals that will come from that networking, with people that I'll use as referral partners and then I'll do joint ventures with and things like that. Just unbelievable, the connections that you make with that level of people that were there. And it's like you walk out of the front of the hotel and it looks like a sports car dealership, right? There's just all kinds of valet parked luxury vehicles, and all those people you get to spend a significant amount of time with and learning about them. And I just really loved it. Nate Alford put on an incredible conference. And let's talk about a couple of the takeaways. That I think there's two main takeaways from the conference for me. I feel like it's the same for you, but the first one is just how we communicate with different personality types. And we're not going to give away any of the secrets, because you should go to SWAT. You should learn all this stuff, independently. But in general, we're talking about how do you communicate with your clients who may have a different personality than you? How do you communicate with the agents on your team who may have a different personality than you? And are you aware of your personality and how your personality comes across, or what your tendencies are, so that when you meet somebody that has opposite tendencies, you're not, constrained and handcuffed by your own nature, and you can sort of speak in their language. And so I think, man, for me, I've been doing personal development for a long time. I've gone through a bunch of different personality assessments, from Myers-Briggs to the 5 voices to, as a great example, the disc profile from Tony Robbins. And so it's being aware of the people that I'm interacting with, the people on my team, all those things, of, who, I guess, what language somebody needs to hear something in. And am I getting my point across in a way that they can understand it, especially with clients? We're talking about how to sell insurance. It's like, well, if I go into an appointment with somebody who's very calculated, like an engineer, or somebody who wants all the options and the details, and they want everything laid out clearly, and they want to know all the specific points, and I just talk to them about the story of insurance and how incredible it's going to be, well, it's great they're going to feel when their family is protected, that doesn't really help that person, because they make decisions based upon data. And the opposite is true. If I talk to somebody and they're more in that intellectual, they want the feelings and the stories and the experience and that type of person, and I just come hit them with a bunch of data that Mutual of Omaha was founded in 1903, and it's got $400 billion of assets, and it's got living benefits, and if you have a heart attack, you're going to get 70% of the death benefit if it affects your life expectancy by 26 years. It's like, they don't want to hear any of that. They want to hear how it's going to protect their family. And so just the concept of identifying the type of personality that you're sitting with and presenting information in the way that they can understand it, man, I don't think there's anything better that we could invest in learning than that. It's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I have to agree. I think when we were going through that, was definitely the thing that resonated with me the most. And just being able to illustrate how different people react to different things. Again, I won't kind of let the cat out of the bag, but probably one of the most impactful exercises that I got to hear from, that I got to take notes on, that I'm really excited to have as a reference guide, is we looked at, for all these different personality types, they talked about what are the things that they really like, that they resonate with, that are comfortable to them, and what are the things that are just really kind of icky, what are the things they want to stay away from, what are the things that are really uncomfortable and that they don't like. And it was so funny to see different people in the room have, some people, what they really liked is what another group really didn't like.
Yeah.
And you have to use that to your advantage when you're working with certain people, to not only identify, number one, okay, who am I talking to? What sort of personality am I probably communicating with? And then how do I make sure that I'm communicating within their language? And that, as a leader, is something that a lot of times requires you to maybe do something, or I guess not do something that's uncomfortable, but maybe to kind of speak in a way that maybe isn't like supernatural. For example, for me, as someone who's, that we, if you were to use the five voices, we would say kind of that pioneer connector, and so for someone who's more of a softer, nurturing kind of voice, it's a little bit more, going to be driven by, kind of feelings and a little bit more of intuitiveness. I kind of have to soften my approach, and I have to work on how am I going to connect with that person in their language. I can't blow them out of the water with being, bringing a ton of challenge, for example. So I just thought that was really, really impactful for me to figure out, like, hey, different voices have different ways that they want to be spoken to. They have different ways that they want to communicate with you. And the other thing is just like, number one, not everyone is just put into a box. It's not like because there's 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 different personality types, or, the Myers-Briggs, they got those 16 different ones. You're not like, just because you're in one of those 16 boxes doesn't mean like that's all you and you're 100% defined by that. Everybody has little bits of all these different personalities. And under stress, you could be a totally different person,
Sure.
or you can have at least a totally different kind of personality that comes out. Under relaxation, you could be totally different as well. So it's one of those things where you just always are thinking to yourself, how do I relate to people that I might not naturally get along with? And I think it's really important, as someone who's building an agency, to know, for somebody that is an important member of my agency and my team, how do I figure out an open and honest and good line of communication with each other where we can understand each other, even if we don't maybe instantly click?
Yeah, man, I love that. Let's say, talking about how you use this to sell, let's say that you're in a room of 100 people, and in that room of 100 people, 25 of them speak English, 25 of them speak French, 25 of them speak German, and 25 of them speak Japanese, right? If you only know how to speak English, you can only possibly sell to 25% of the room, because you can't communicate with the people that speak those other languages. And that's what it's like if you don't understand your personality types and how to communicate with the other personality types, because you might be going into a meeting and selling insurance with a spouse that is very driven and results oriented and doesn't like details and wants to get to a decision, who's married, opposites attract, right? To a spouse that wants all the details and wants all the specifics and wants all the information. And you need to read who are each of these people, because if I only give one side the information that they need, the other side isn't going to buy, right? And maybe sometimes I'll get lucky and they'll just go along with the flow. But for the most part, I need to be measuring how I'm connecting with the clients that I'm sitting with. And so I'll share, like, I'm super guilty of this. I'm a, more of a driven, results oriented person, and the details kind of bore me, and I don't want, I don't want all the nuts and bolts. But I meet with a lot of clients that want the nuts and bolts, and I meet with a lot of clients that are more touchy feely and want the story and want the description of how their loved ones are going to be protected, and want that full story told, or maybe a story of how it impacted somebody else, because they're really about protecting other people and that's their main motivation. And so let me tell you about one of my other clients who got this coverage, and they were in a car accident and they were disabled, and their family was so worried that they weren't going to be able to cover all the bills and the expenses. But thankfully, 6 months before, she had gotten a policy with me, and I was able to deliver a check to that family, and they felt such a peace of mind. And I may be a client that needs to hear that. I may be sitting with a client that needs to hear, let's get this done. It's $139 a month. Get your family protected. Let's go. Right. But I need to be able to read what type of personality I'm sitting with. And that's the most impactful takeaway from SWAT for sure. So
Yeah, and I think the sales element of this is so crucial. And I know I talk about it in the sense of leadership, but it's also something that, I realize, and I'll give an example. I had an agent that met with one of my clients right after I met with them, like just a matter of days afterwards. And the client, even after she had written a policy with me, she decided, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and let this other agent take care of me. And you know what's crazy? That other agent wrote her the exact same policy with the exact same company that I did. How is that possible, you think? How did I meet with somebody? I understood their need,
Right.
at least in my personality voice. We got two options. We wrote the policy got approved. And then she says, you know what? I connected with someone else that I'd really rather just kind of do business with. Nothing negative about you. You helped me in the way that you could, but you know what? This person really connected with me on a deeper level.
Yeah.
And so, number one, it sucks, right? But I totally respect that. Like, I get it, and this is a very, very rare circumstance, but it kind of just comes right back to, I didn't do clearly a good enough job with understanding what that particular client needed, because I took care of their need on the insurance side because this other agent got them the exact same thing. But what I didn't take care of was maybe the confidence that they're working with someone that really cared, that they that they were working with someone that they really connected with, that they felt really comfortable with. And so from that standpoint, it just really resonated with me of like, man, I got to think about when I am communicating with people, even though I know that my products and services and my knowledge is going to help 100% of the room, if I only connect or I only resonate with 25% of the room, that's not a winning formula for consistent business. So, I'm starting to think about this in the way I text clients. I'm starting to think about it in the way today when I'm going to be calling clients. Like, am I quickly identifying, is this someone who's a little bit more of a soft or nurturing personality type, or is it a little bit more firmer? And then I need to adjust my approach based on what's coming back to me in that sense. So this goes just as much, if not more, to sales than it is leadership.
Yeah, 100%. And sales at some point in time is leadership, right? It's leading our clients into a decision and them looking to us for advice and direction. And so I think they go hand in hand. It was, again, the tools that were taught, the strategies that were shared, the way to mark and identify the clients that you're speaking with, what language they use, worth 10 times the price of admission to SWAT. Make sure that you get there next year because you'll learn some stuff that you'll be able to take immediately and put into your business. The last piece, like we could talk a lot about facts tell, stories sell, and sort of like the idea of storytelling, because there was a huge segment on the idea of storytelling and really how we are influenced by most advertisement. And if you really pay attention to advertisement and what our clients are manipulated by, I'll just use, right? Because none of our ads really that you see on television or pop-ups on social media, anything like that, tell the facts about what the product is. A lot of them tell feeling-based stories or, things that pull at the heartstrings. And you don't realize that your clients that you're sitting with get that every single day. They are bombarded by that type of messaging every single day from every advertisement. You speaking in that way just falls right in line with what they're normally used to seeing and used to hearing. That's a whole nother episode. But what I really want to jump into, man, was sort of the third big takeaway. Nate did a whole sequence on, really Think and Grow Rich, the Napoleon Hill, many other sources, but the subconscious mind and feeding the subconscious mind and letting the subconscious mind bring your goals and dreams to fruition in your life. Some of the things that were shared were incredible. Some of the people who had been using these processes who, in their words, attracted their goals into their life. We heard somebody 3 years ago who's, wrote down, I'm going to have this specific type of car and this specific type of house. And now 3 years later, they pulled up in that specific type of car and they're building that specific type of house. Really, really amazing stuff. But I went through last year and with Edward Pritchett, who's one of my mentors, and we did Think and Grow Rich as a group. We read Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich. We wrote some of the blue cards down. And for those who don't know, training the subconscious mind, the suggestion in that sequence is there's these cards that are blue index cards with blue pen. There's something about the color blue that influences the subconscious mind, and you write down very specific affirmation goals like they had already happened. Like, I love how I feel in my 5,000 square foot house with a pool and a bowling alley, whatever it is. I love how it feels to drive my car. I love how it feels to be completely out of debt, or I'm so happy every day when I wake up and I'm completely out of debt. Like you're talking about it in that way, and you put them on these cards and you read them before you go to bed and you read them when you wake up. And when you read them before you go to bed, the subconscious mind, in theory, works on them while you're asleep. You read them when you wake up, and your conscious mind works on them while you're awake. Much like if I said, hey, any of you listening to this episode, however many red Toyotas you saw before listening to this episode today, I'm going to give you $1,000 for each one. Versus if I tell you after this episode, however many red Toyotas you see, tell me and I'll give you $1,000 for each one, because your mind is trained on looking for red Toyotas. So if you read that affirmation at the beginning of the day, your mind is trained on making that happen in your life. I have experienced amazing benefits from this process. And I know some people might say it's a little hokey. At this point, I think it's been proven enough times in my life, personally, and from other people in my life, that I don't really care why it works. I just know that it works. And we did a full sequence on really locking in and designing how you want your life to look, what your life's going to look like in 20 years, 10 years, 5 years, 1 year, visualizing that and putting it on those blue cards and sort of having your subconscious sequence to read before bed, to read in the morning. I'm really interested to hear what your takeaways were from this, Grant. I don't know if you've ever experienced, Think and Grow Rich, or if that was your first time interacting with it, but man, I want to hear what your takeaways were.
Yeah, I have always referenced Think and Grow Rich as like the Shakespeare of personal development.
Yeah.
And I think for a lot of people, it's a difficult thing to kind of understand. Yeah, that's the one. Think and Grow Rich. This thing was originally written in the early 20th century. And when you kind of think about that, like, this is a philosophy that's been around, 100 years. And all of the very wealthy people uh, in this world are really utilizing so much of this practices. And if you study like the wealthy individuals, so many of them follow these principles, and some of them, might not admit or even think that they do, but a lot of times they really do. So anyway, when I was looking at this, I think the idea just in general of visualization, I don't think anyone can really argue that if I visualize something happening and I kind of mentally prepare for it, it's going to help the outcome be a lot closer to what I want, and it's going to make it better in general. Just this idea, but when you use the word affirmations, or you use the word blueprint your life, or you use the words vision casting, that's what I think makes it seem a little bit wonky for people. And so I guess one of the things that I know I'm looking at it from is a reminder. This is a book that I've read several times over. These are things that I've done many times, reading these things before, right when I wake up, and then also kind of again at night. And every time I've done that consistently, I've seen that there is a natural trend towards making those things happen. And I've noticed that whenever there's been a period of time where I'm not, getting what I want out of my business or my financial situation or my physicality, like, it always goes back to a lack of personal development in that stretch of time. Like, and even just from how I feel, like, there'll be a couple days in a row where I'm like, man, I'm just not really in the zone. And I think about, well, what was I missing these last few days? Oh, I didn't write down the 3 things I was grateful for every morning. I wasn't reading my 10 pages a day. I wasn't like, listening to those YouTube videos that get you hyped up to start the day. And so with this part of the event, man, like, it was super uncomfortable. It was really tough to figure out, hey, where am I going to be 20 years from now? Where am I going to be 5 years from now? And then think about, like, how's my life going to look? And the cool thing about this exercise is at no point during it were we talking about like how to do it. We
Yeah.
were only talking about what's going to happen.
Yep.
And so the cool thing about that is all you got to really be intentional about is like, what do I actually want? And I need to act as if I already have it. And then there's going to be the ability for you to create how it's going to happen. What phrase they say? They go, a strong enough why can bear any how.
Yep.
So, man, I would say getting around people that have what you want and tell you how to get it is the reason we do these events.
Totally. Yeah, man. I would just
Wow.
say, like, to bring it to a, maybe a more practical level for those of you guys who are listening to this and you're like, well, this all sounds great, but I'm broke and I need to sell insurance to be able to make it in this industry. I get it 100%. For a long time, many years, I maintained that the reason why I sold as much insurance as I sold was because before every appointment that I went into, this is back when we were going in person, before every appointment that I went into, before I shut my car off and walked inside the house, I would close my eyes and I would envision them signing the application. Like when it was first in pen, then it was like them signing it on my iPad, right? But I would close my eyes and I would envision them signing, them buying. And every single time that I walked through a door, if somebody booked an appointment with me and they showed up and they let me in their house, I knew I was going to sell insurance. I had this unshakable belief that they were going to buy insurance because I had already seen it in my head of them buying. And so the belief shaped my entire appointment. I wasn't coming at it from a place of weakness. I was coming at a place of confidence. I knew they were going to buy insurance. I visualized in my head. I wasn't shocked when they were like, oh, we'll take that one. I didn't talk past the close. It was like, okay, great. Yeah, I know you'll take that one because I visualized you buying it. And that transitioned when I went virtual, when I would sell online. It's like I would visualize them signing the e-app, right? What Ashton's dealing with right now, however long it's taken him to get the e-app done while we're in here filming this episode. But I think that visualization and training your subconscious mind to get the things that you want in your life is so powerful, it scares people. Because you actually need to, like, once you realize that it can do it, you're like, oh man, I've been feeding myself such terrible information about myself. That's why you got to realize, I realized it was my fault. Or it was like a lot of the failure that I was ending up in was because in my head, I was like, what if I fail? What if I fail? What if it doesn't work out? It was like, if this doesn't work out, I'm going to be da, 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 da. And I was training my mind for the reality of stuff not working out rather than training my mind for the reality of what would happen when it works out, what my life is going to be like when we accomplish what I'm setting out to do, and training my mind to look for all the ways to make it happen rather than all the ways to make it not happen. So, this is something we could probably talk about for hours, but if you want a shortcut, I mean, it's not really a shortcut. Think and Grow Rich is a freaking really long book. But there's plenty of YouTube videos. Napoleon Hill is just a character and he's really old timey. He's right, first, the mind does crazy things. But like the information in this book will change your life. And I think what Nate did, combining it with the heart field and some of the other elements, really was so breathtaking and really exciting for me to start putting some of this stuff to work in my life. So I think we'll wrap it up there and tell everybody, like, get to SWAT, get your tickets, invest in conferences, invest in developing yourself and associating with people and great content. Final words from Mr. Grant Lieber.
Final thoughts on this, man, is when you come home and you have that rush of excitement that you've just learned all this stuff, you need to make sure that it doesn't end there. You need to parlay that into action. That's why we're talking about this. That's why we're intentional about it. I can tell you that on my to-do list, it says catch up on my journaling and complete the SWAT training book that we were given. Because when I was in the room, I was a little overwhelmed. I did not complete every single exercise that we were working on. And so I'm going to take time to be intentional about working on that. And then I'm going to be intentional about thinking about it on a daily basis. So I don't want, this to be an event where I just said, hey, that was a lot of fun. I learned a lot of good stuff. And then 6 months later, it was no changes.
Yep.
So I would say whenever you go to these events, whenever you learn something new, that's not even half the battle. The battle is making sure that you're implementing it on a consistent basis.
Man, such great advice. We will keep bringing you back fresh content weekly. Check us out. Follow us on all socials. Subscribe and make sure you turn alerts on to this episode if you're on YouTube. And Ashton might rejoin us in the future. He might just be writing this app for many months to come, and you might not see him again.
Forever.
I don't know.
That's his life now.
Yeah, it's his life now. He's stuck in the e-app hell. Well, we'll see you guys here on the next episodes, and everybody have fun out there selling. Night, everybody.